Hi, Garth. Artist first. I think it's important to say, after learning over doing curatorial things for the last 4 years as well, suddenly people forget to call you an artist.
Oh.
So I make my own work. I would say more sculpture and installation. And I've started to use colour a lot more lately after doing some residencies in Scotland 2 years ago. It's a place called Hospital Fields, which is really cool. Like 10 artists from across the world get invited to kind of set up camp in this huge house by the sea.
Wow.
So I became really fascinated about coastal culture and also socially living on the edge. Blackpool's a really strange ecology when thinking about contemporary art. Not many people are making contemporary art or trying to talk in a certain language about art. There's a lot to do with makers and designers, and there is a place for that, and people making things to sell. And that there's a very fine line between making things and then in a hobby way of making, and then just sharing that out to whoever wants to see it on a table. Become fascinated in what the distinctions between things are. I'm a gay man living in Blackpool making contemporary art. That alone is awkward sometimes and very nuanced in how you might talk to people and communicate your ideas. You know, how do you get that across without it seeming that you're just looking to be jazz hands or things like that, particularly in Blackpool historically, which is very much to do with entertainment and performance. And then you offer up some objects in a gallery space and say that they are camp or they are gendered in some way and they are having a conversation about homosexuality and they just look different, which is what I like. And that is the purpose of discussing kind of gay culture as well. It's exposing things in a different way and exploring what the qualities of those things are. So that naturally plays into contemporary art and materials and pushing the boundaries of an object or how it's made or how it's displayed are things that I become really curious by, which I think was quite present in the Graft exhibition, which I curated. So that was just a project that I proposed to the Harris. It wasn't on their programme to begin with. It wasn't, and I was working on another project in Nottingham. So I did this. I was doing a festival in Nottingham, which was showcasing over 200 artists in the city as part of this thing called City Takeover. So I coordinated that festival, and then as a result of that, I wanted to make sure there was something else straight after that, so that more artists could have a showcase of their work. Slowly realising that some of the barriers of doing big festivals is that not many people actually get their work seen because there's just too much of it. Purely coincidental out of selecting those artists. Geographically, most of those artists were kind of in the northern regions, with some in Nottingham and London. So I just became fascinated as a result of that show of how I start to work with younger artists and exhibit their work. It usually just comes from, I guess, culturally growing up here. I've not had many opportunities other than what I make myself. It's not a subject that your parents tell you can do. Like, art is not a career subject. So you kind of have to imagine that future for yourself and carve it out, rather than knowing that every day that you wake up, someone's going, oh, what are you going to do? Oh, you should make that, you should push that, question that. It's working with what people understand already, usually, here. It's like there's limited jobs, hospitality, you know, catering, chef, restaurants, particularly here, you know, it's about servicing tourists that come in and out, rather than them asking any questions about your own dreams or fantasies or what you want to achieve. So I set Abingdon up, which is this studio here, 4 years ago. No, sorry, 6 years ago. God. Yeah, 6 years ago. And for 4 years we've been independent. So when we first set it up, we negotiated with the council. So we did a lot of research with other artist studio spaces from across the UK. It wasn't an easy ride. It wasn't just we've got some cash, let's rent a building. No. You know, that's luxury if you've got cash and a place of privilege, usually. So we had zero money. I was working at the council at the time, part-time. And then in my dinner breaks, I used to try and talk to people about how their budgets work, what's their programme. When they talk about economics, what do they mean? All of these things that I didn't have any knowledge about. When you try and talk about art in a different way to a different person, because artists are easy to talk to each other and share, but then you've also got to go outside the box to get people investing in your ideas sometimes. So I just approached the council and said, I've done this huge survey across the country. Over 300 people have filled it in and said there's a need for a studio space in Blackpool. And then I did a list of basic facilities. So we became independent 4 years ago. We used to just be on one floor downstairs, and then we built up here as well. We have quite a good relationship with the Grundy Art Gallery, if you've been in there today already. So Tom, who is like their operations manager and sets all the shows up there, he is the other director here, so me and him kind of run the studio. So often we get lots of surplus materials from them, and then that almost dictates what we program sometimes and what we build based on what materials are available to us and don't cost us lots of money. So all these studios were just built out of leftover wood from a huge installation that they did with artist Heather Phillipson. Work's self-contained, we don't have a public programme. One of the difficulties is sometimes to try and get funding you have to engage communities, and then at the same time that sometimes affects the work that you can make. And equally as directors we don't want to expect artists to do things. You know, they're here to make their own work and they rent studios, so unless they're interested in doing something we don't tend to programme it. So we try and be quite diplomatic in that way and collective, but I guess collective is the wrong word because we're all individuals. Over the last 4 years we've done quite a varied programme. We've done residencies, which we're really keen on a lot of the time, so how we invite more artists to Blackpool to, I guess, expose it a little bit and open it up for further questions, further thinking and different outcomes beyond what you would normally see here. And we did a residency called Work Leisure, and we got Arts Council funding for that, so that invited 5 artists from Europe at different times to come and be in Blackpool for up to 2 months, and then they kind of lived and worked here, because one of the ideas that we had is that until artists kind of spend a period of time living here and working here, you don't really change the perception of the place. People already think they know Blackpool before they come, because it's so many different opinions on Blackpool when you're not here. So come and work here and tell us what you think after that.